I would like the buses to have those ramps automatic, because in that case I could go without a helper. Bus driver can't go out and help me, he mustn't. So I have to have a helper to take the ramp.
Using public transport on her own would give Marie-Louise a bit of independence after having been in a wheelchair for 26 years of her life. In Aarhus, the only alternative to public buses are special taxis with ramps. But every wheelchair user is limited to 125 trips per year. Marie-Louise wants to leave her house more than once a week and is lucky enough to have a helper to herself.
Some of the people who live in the communities doesn't have a helper. They don't have one helper to one person. They just maybe 4 people to one helper, and then you can't take the buses. Many of the drivers says no to wheelchairs.
It's not. Sometimes there's not enough space, I think, but they can't be any bigger, so they have to drive more often, I think.
Denmark joined the UN Convention for the Rights of Disabled People in 2009. According to this convention, people with disabilities are to be treated on an equal level to those without. For example, wheelchair users are meant to be using the buses independently and without help. The Institute for Human Rights is now investigating whether or not Aarhus is going by new EU law that says you should show an active effort to eliminate those obstacles.
Every city, including a sort of fairly large city by Danish standards as Aarhus, is of course obliged to comply with European Union law in this area, regardless of resources. If it were to be found that Denmark were in breach of European Union law because the buses were not equipped appropriately, then of course the only way to remedy the breach would be to equip the buses appropriately. So the only way in which Denmark would eventually avoid the fine or avoid the daily penalties continuously running would be to comply with the judgment and make sure that the buses are equipped properly. What struck me is that, as far as I know, Aarhus has fairly recently got relatively new buses. So what struck me was that it wasn't actually thought of when these buses were actually commissioned from a supplier. So I wonder why they didn't think about that when they bought the buses.
I want every bus at all to be a low bus, and I want the driver to come and help me until the ramp go out itself.
Aarhus public transport provider Mid Traffic refused to comment on the issue.